MicroStrategy and the Bitcoin strategy are spreading like the plague in corporate treasuries as the Bitcoin acceleration phase of Bitcoin on public treasuries, publicly traded companies' treasuries is rapidly accelerating. We are seeing something absolutely take off that cannot be described here because this is an epidemic, folks. We are seeing Bitcoin on public treasuries absolutely take off, both on the public and private sector. Now, with 2025 just starting, simply just a quarter in, we're seeing a massive, massive rise of companies that are putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And this is going to be increasing as we now see that the earnings from Q1 are going to be coming here very, very soon in the next couple of weeks. So, as we all know and love, MicroStrategy now has over 500,000 coins. That's half a Satoshi, folks. So we see MicroStrategy obviously leading the way, but what we're also seeing is Marathon, Riot, CleanSpark, all of these others adding to their corporate treasury. Of course, Metaplanet continuing to rise as well as Block getting into the game. But if we look at this, the Bitcoin holdings by publicly traded companies throughout 2025, at least according to CoinGecko, we're seeing the massive amount of Bitcoin now getting gobbled up. Now, what I like to look at here is at bitcointreasuries.net, you can see that the Bitcoin in treasuries is absolutely expanding. We have 3.15 million in Bitcoin just on corporate treasuries. So this is absolutely huge, right? We've got it in ETFs. We've got it in private companies that we know. We've gotten in governments, but 3.15, excuse me, Bitcoin there. And then we have 89 public companies now disclosing, 21 private companies. We have 12 different governments holding Bitcoin. And all of these numbers are absolutely accelerating, as we had 33 publicly traded companies at this time last year holding Bitcoin. Now we've seen that nearly triple with 89. Look, I know it's not an exact tripling, but it is fairly close. And we're seeing Bitcoin treasuries absolutely explode with 130 different entities with over 3 million Bitcoin. That's 1/7 of the total supply of Bitcoin ever. And if you think about it, there is Bitcoin that is rumored to be a loss. Satoshi's keys are rumored to be gone and disappeared forever. So with that, this could be an even more or a larger percent, maybe even as much as a sixth, as we're looking at the potential of just 18 million Bitcoin, right? So obviously that's all speculation and nobody knows that full entire number. But what we do know is what the publicly traded companies are disclosing here. We have the ETFs with over 1.3 million Bitcoin already passing Satoshi. Publicly traded companies, obviously with MicroStrategy, now known as Strategy, leading the way with nearly 700,000 Bitcoin, 700,000, 3% of the 21 million supply. And then we've got countries with over 500,000 coins as well, and that's 2.5%. So with all this, right, the 2.5, the 3, the 6, the 1.8 or 2%, we've got nearly 12% of that entire supply under Bitcoin or under corporate treasuries and Bitcoin related companies. And this is going to continue to accelerate, folks, right? We've seen the 10 biggest publicly traded companies with the biggest Bitcoin portfolios. We've seen this. We've all known and talked about it for quite some time. Obviously, we have Michael Saylor and Strategy continue to dominate and buy Bitcoin, and he's going to be buying at the top at all times, right? This is not going to be slowing down. The firm, which many of you, myself included, didn't even realize that it produced mobile software because, you know, we've had Michael Saylor just basically be shilling Bitcoin for quite some time. But instead, what we do have is now we actually know that this is a company that's actually lost money for the past 4 years. So we'll see with the new FASB ruling. So for those of you who don't know, what passed in, I believe, November of last year is the FASB. So this is changing the accounting rules for Bitcoin on a publicly traded company on their balance sheet. So now they can account for the appreciation of these assets on their balance sheet as part of earnings. So if Bitcoin goes up significantly in a quarter, or they're, buying at 60,000 Bitcoin and Bitcoin is at 80,000 like it is right now, that's similar to what strategy is. We're seeing the cost basis up by $20,000, nearly a third, 33%. We'll see MicroStrategy be able to report a 33% in earnings of their Bitcoin holdings on this quarter alone, on this quarter's earnings. So it'll show that MicroStrategy is extremely, extremely profitable when in reality, their core business has been losing money for the past 4 years. So this is going to continue because we're going to see Wall Street jump at this. They have not realized on how to essentially account for all of the different Bitcoin related strategies here. And I don't think Wall Street has a way to evaluate companies like MicroStrategy. And so what we're seeing is all of these different, companies like Marathon Digital. Obviously, they are a Bitcoin mining company. We've got Tesla on there as well, who has continued to hold and hodl that Bitcoin there. And of course, Elon is very, into the Bitcoin space. Of course, he's been into Doge and all these other shit coins, but they're still just holding Bitcoin, right? So they, as my man, or as they are going through with all of this, right? You're looking at what is a corporate treasury and what is the balance sheet, the risk reward, all of these different things, right? All of them really help with liquidity management and risk mitigation. Now, what you hear as the FUD in a lot of spaces is that Bitcoin is extremely volatile, right? It's extremely risky. But what is not risky? Oh, holding cash. Well, yes, holding cash on your balance sheet is not risky. Why? Because the Fed tells you you're going to lose 2% of that purchasing power every single year. So you know that cash on your balance sheet is going to lose money. You just know it's going to lose purchasing power, right? You're going to still have the same amount of dollars where, okay, Bitcoin, maybe it goes up, maybe it goes down in a specific quarter. But the one thing that you do know is over time, and as Michael Saylor says, if you hold or hodl Bitcoin for over 4 years, nobody's ever lost money in fiat terms. So the risk mitigation there, I think, is really interesting. They're talking about short-term investments, debt management, and strategic planning. So I think Bitcoin really uniquely fits the strategic planning and the risk mitigation like no other asset that could possibly be on a balance sheet does. So what does that mean? It means we're going to see more and more companies put Bitcoin on the balance sheet because it just makes sense to hold all of this, right? We're seeing GME now, Ryan Cohen, the CEO of GameStop, now put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. We're seeing MicroStrategy, or now known as Strategy, continue to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And we're seeing the corporate treasuries now of 1.5 million Bitcoin being $124 billion worth of Bitcoin now on these corporate treasuries, both on private and publicly traded companies. Now, the unique aspect too is what we saw the other day. We saw Bitcoin's price the other day where the market was absolutely tanking. Bitcoin was relatively flat. Bitcoin was not crashing down and burning like everything else in the stock market. We had an extremely red day in the stock market, but we saw Bitcoin actually perform fairly well comparatively, right? We saw everybody was saying, oh, call your mother, call everybody, call your ex-girlfriend, because we're seeing a giant red day. But what we are seeing is Bitcoin start to decouple, and that is going to continue. right? Bitcoin is going to continue to decouple from all of this. This week, if you look at this, right, this week was wild. The last time we saw markets fall by 9.5% over a span of 2 days was after March 14th, 2020, when the Federal Reserve responded with a sweeping multi-trillion-dollar rescue package, which included $500 billion in quantitative easing and just $1 trillion of daily repos. So, I mean, look at this market. The Mag 7 down 14, down 13, down 5%. Google down 6, Meta down 12.5%. All of these things absolutely tanking. And then what was Bitcoin in the past week? Down 0.71%. So the decoupling of Bitcoin from the Mag 7, from the stock market, from the overall potentially just, market-based economy is starting. And I think that everybody on the corporate treasury side of things is looking at that. And that is why we're seeing this exponential growth here. It's not safe to necessarily have and hold the S&P 500 on your corporate balance sheet. You've got to rely on other companies potentially giving money to your competitors. Why would you do that? Doesn't make sense. Gold, you have to have it verified. You have to have all of these different aspects, right? You have to have gold verified. You have to have it stored somewhere. Maybe you're just holding paper gold on these ETFs and you're having some counterparty risk with all of that. But as McLovin is saying, this is why we Bitcoin, right? This is why we're holding Bitcoin and we're continuing to move it forward. Michael's saying they have a half a Nakamoto, not a half a Satoshi. Peter Schiff has half a Satoshi and half a brain shell. That guy, that's electric. I love that. And I mean, some people make their shtick off of just ripping on Bitcoin and they haven't really realized it. Whereas Joku is saying Metaplanet continue to rise. Why? The stock is down completely then. Well, Metaplanet continues to buy Bitcoin, and Bitcoin on their corporate treasury is continuing to increase. So what up, Benny Hanna? Saying, let's go, Brandon. I always love it when I see that in the chat. LFG, baby. But what we are seeing is, like I said, the publicity around these companies that are having more and more Bitcoin on their balance sheet is continuing to increase, right? We're seeing more of these Michael Saylor type of figures increase. We're seeing more of these people start to realize that, hey, look at this. There's blood in the streets, folks. Inflation is still high. The potential of the Fed now having to print massive amounts of money. Look, last time this happened, $500 billion in quantitative easing, $11 trillion. What we're seeing is now people start to describe, hey, we might need to see some quantitative easing and see that fairly quickly, right? What are we really trying to look at, right? I mean, we're potentially seeing, like my man Pomp over here said, the Federal Reserve might have to make an emergency rate cut soon. Inflation has fallen since its lowest levels to 2020. If this continues, it will be a big problem. Look, I don't know if I necessarily believe truflation and this calculation, but this is what Wall Street looks at. This is what Jerome Powell looks at. A lot of these people on Wall Street are somewhat delusional and disconnected from Main Street. So as you and I both know that inflation is still absolutely skyrocketing, and we're seeing price of eggs fall. We're seeing some of these things fall, but things are still very expensive. We aren't seeing wages quite catch up yet. But Wall Street is seeing this and saying, hey, we might need to see an emergency rate cut. And what is an emergency rate cut? It's essentially just money printing, folks. One of my favorite websites of all time that I bring up to you guys who come to this quite often is govflation.com. You can really get a good sense of what is going on here from, these are the official government headlines, right? Government is telling you in February, 2.8%. Look at this. January, they said 3%. Real CPI was 10.67%. They were saying that there was a positive return of 1.45%, when in reality, the real return was negative 6.32%. Just look at the differences in what the government is reporting now compared to what they would have reported if they kept that basket of goods from 1982. And I'll make this bigger for you guys, so I apologize if you could not see that earlier. But these things that we're seeing, like this gap is just continuing to widen. So they're manipulating all of this data. One thing that they can't manipulate is Bitcoin. And that's what they truly fear here. And that's why we're seeing the corporate treasuries really start to increase and continue to buy and hold Bitcoin. And if corporate treasuries are looking at this, then you should be able to be looking at it too, folks. So I'm going to help you guys get started on your Bitcoin journey. If you haven't already, get your Lightning wallets ready because we're going to be giving you some free sats courtesy of my friends over at the Bitcoin Well. Now you could go to bitcoinwell.com/greencandle and get some sats every single time you buy Bitcoin as well. Or you could just click the subscribe button with the bell notification and get notified every time I go live because I will be giving you free sats every time you come to a live stream. So buckle up, folks. Get your Lightning wallets ready. You have the potential to win 1 million sats with this nice little wishing well that we've got going on here. So let's see. What do we got? 210 sats here. So hurry up and snag it as quickly as possible. And like I said, folks, go to the link in the description, bitcoinwell.com/greencandle. If you, for some reason, miss this, looking for a place to buy Bitcoin, they promote self-custody. They force you to do self-custody as well, which is why I've partnered with them. And I really do love Bitbox for a solution for self-custody. You could get the Bitbox O2 5% off by using promo code GreenCandle because they want the candies in the chat, the Green Candle Army. I don't know. I got to come up with a good nickname. Maybe give me some nicknames for you guys here in the chat. We could figure out what to call everybody in Green Candle's chat here going forward. But get the Bitcoin only edition. You can get 5% off. They've even got metal backups, a steel punch plate where you can enter in your seed phrase and store it directly. They've literally got everything. They're a one-stop shop. So you could go to bitbox.swiss. That's bitbox.swiss/greencandle. And you could get all of this in one stop. Get the Bitbox Bitcoin only edition and use promo code GreenCandle to get all of that off, 5% off. Because what are we seeing here, folks? As I am saying this to you, we're seeing corporate treasuries. We're seeing big money managers. We're seeing guys like Ryan Cohen and GME literally look at Bitcoin and say, hey, Michael Saylor, he's a giga chad. He bought 250 million worth of Bitcoin right off the jump. You know, what am I going to do? I'm going to buy 6 times of that, 5 times of that right away. Right? We're going to buy 6 times the amount that Michael Saylor bought initially. GameStop has a ton of Bitcoin has a ton of cash on its balance sheet. Now, what I do see is the potential of this publicly traded company's rise. What I see is this right here. Who am I looking at right here? Specifically, if you guys watch the podcast, you know that I've been asking these guys, watch out for Meta, folks. I have the theory that Mark Zuckerberg could potentially be a bigger Bitcoin bull than Michael Saylor. And if you guys have watched my podcast, you know that basically I'm saying this because Meta has more voting rights for just strictly in Mark Zuckerberg's hands, more than Michael Saylor had at the time. Obviously, Meta is part of the Mag 7, so the market cap of Meta is significantly higher than when Michael Saylor started buying Bitcoin for MicroStrategy, now known as Strategy. And he's named his goats Bitcoin and Maxi. And he's got now his little fro going. He's got the, riding on the surfboard with the American flag. He could complete the full rebranding simply by putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So I love it. McLovin saying, hit the like button on the way out. If you appreciate Brandon's hard work, I appreciate that. You guys should stick around a little bit. I'm still not done ripping and rolling with all of this because of what we're seeing with the publicly traded companies now buying Bitcoin. I think that Mark Zuckerberg and Meta could do something that could absolutely break the internet. It could break corporate treasuries. It could make Bitcoin shoot off significantly. We've got this. We've got now the potential of Bitcoin bonds and the United States government finding these ways to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And maybe I'll do a video on that at another time, a little bit later. But what we are seeing is the massive amounts of publicly traded companies and private companies now putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. $3.15 million. ETFs scooping up Bitcoin at an unbelievable rate. And that the entities of holding Bitcoin continue to increase. So, as you guys are saying in the chat, smash the link, the Likington, smash the like button. Continue to tune in and do all the chat. Hello, is Rock. Hello, is Rock. My son changed my name. I don't know, Rock. It looks like Rock VTM is still the name here. So I don't know if your son actually changed it or not, or if you're just trolling in the chat. But what we are seeing, these ETFs continue to scoop up more and more Bitcoin, right? The ETFs being absolute savages, publicly traded companies. We're looking at Metaplanet, Dylan LeClaire, friend of the program, continuing to scoop up. They've gotten 4,000 Bitcoin, right? We've got now companies in Europe, the Bitcoin Group, SE, scooping up Bitcoin. We've got Semlar Scientific now going for it. We've got a lot of different companies all over the globe now continuing to do it. Look at this broker company. I believe this is in the Philippines now buying Bitcoin. So this strategy is now going international. And he's continuing to spread like the plague. But it's a good plague, the Bitcoin plague. Everybody's taking the orange pill and continuing to see this increase, see the number increase. We're seeing that people are looking at the risk mitigation. They're seeing them look at the debt management. They're looking at this for strategic planning. Bitcoin is the solution for all of this. So smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, tell a friend to tell a friend, hit the bell notification so you guys know when I go live, so you guys can scoop up some sats. And thank you guys all for coming into the chat.